It starts on a stormy Manhattan bridge, where a pregnant woman fights for breath as her husband pulls his mistress to safety and leaves her trapped in a sinking car. They thought the river would hide the truth. They thought she would never come back, but they had no idea who they were dealing with, because she is not a victim. She is the woman who survived the cold water, rebuilt her life, and returned with evidence that will shatter every lie he ever told. What follows is a story of betrayal, survival, and a courtroom reckoning that hits harder than anyone expects. Trust me, you will not see the final blow coming until we dive in. Tell us what time you are watching and where you are tuning in from. Drop a comment below, we would love to hear from you. The storm over Manhattan raged like something alive. Rain slammed against the windshield of the black Mercedes, and the wind pushed against the doors with the force of a fist. The entire bridge trembled under the weight of the storm, and the headlights of passing cars looked like smears of white in the darkness. Inside, the cabin felt tight and cold, filled with the sharp scent of wet pavement and Ryan's aftershave. Emma sat in the back seat, her hands wrapped protectively around her belly. 6 months pregnant. Her breathing came slow and shallow. She had promised herself she would stay calm tonight, but the pressure in her chest felt unbearable. Every bump in the road made her clutch her stomach a little tighter. Every flash of lightning made her flinch. Up front, the glow of Ryan's phone lit the car in short bursts. The screen kept lighting up with new notifications, one after another. Each time the name appeared, it made Emma's heart pound harder. Play. Emma recognized the name. The woman from Ryan's firm. The woman from the photos. The woman whose perfume had lingered on Ryan's shirts more than once. The woman Emma had begun to fear without wanting to admit it. These were not new messages being sent at this moment. They were unread messages from earlier that night or work notifications tied to Chloe's PR tasks. But Emma did not know that. She only saw the name glowing again and again in the storm's reflected light. Ryan gripped the steering wheel tighter. His knuckles whitened and his jaw flexed with irritation. Chloe sat in the passenger seat beside him. She was silent, staring straight ahead, her hands folded neatly on her lap. The tension was suffocating. No one spoke for several long minutes. Finally, Emma forced herself to break the silence. "Why are there so many messages from her?" she said softly. Her voice trembled. "We just left that dinner. What does she still need that she already sent you so many times?" Ryan exhaled hard through his nose. "We are not doing this right now," he muttered. Emma swallowed. "I am not starting anything. I am asking why my husband keeps getting messages from a woman who smells like his shirt." Chloe shifted slightly in her seat but still did not speak. The sound of her movement made the moment even sharper, like someone had drawn a blade across glass. Ryan snapped. "Emma, you always turn nothing into something. It was a meeting. She handles my clients and my public appearances. She messages me all the time. In the middle of the night," Emma said, "and during dinner, and during the car ride." Ryan glanced back at her through the rearview mirror. His eyes were cold and irritated. "Because unlike you, she understands that I have to work at this level." The words hit Emma like a slap. Her throat tightened. She pressed a hand to her stomach, feeling the baby shift under her palm. She tried to keep her voice steady. "I understand your work. What I do not understand is why you avoid looking at me when I ask about her." "Because you sound accusing," Ryan said sharply. "Because you are paranoid." Lightning flashed across the sky. Thunder cracked so loud the car seemed to vibrate. The road glistened like glass. Emma felt tears sting the corners of her eyes, but she forced them back. She would not break down. Not here. Not in front of both of them. Another message flashed across Ryan's phone. "Chloe, 2:17 a.m. Emma's heart dropped. She leaned forward slightly. "Why is she messaging at this hour?" Ryan slammed his hand against the wheel. "Stop reading into everything." "I'm not reading into things," Emma said. "I'm reading your phone." Chloe let out a small, uncomfortable breath. Ryan shot her a warning look, then glared back at the road. "Emma, sit back and stop. I have enough to deal with without you attacking me in a storm." Her voice cracked. "I am not attacking you. I am asking why my husband smells like another woman." Ryan turned his head to reply. He took his eyes off the road for 1 second. 1 second too long. A pair of red taillights appeared ahead. A large truck crawled slowly across the bridge. Ryan gasped, jerked the wheel, and the Mercedes lost control. The tires skidded violently across the slick pavement. Water sprayed outward in huge arcs. The car spun sideways. Emma screamed. The world twisted around her in a blur of lights and noise. The Mercedes slammed into the guardrail. Metal screeched. Glass shattered. The front of the car bent inward, and the entire vehicle lurched forward. Half of it hung over the edge of the bridge. Beneath them, the river churned like black, icy claws reaching upward. Emma's head snapped back. Pain shot across her ribs. She tried to move. Her door was crushed. Her seatbelt locked. Cold water began leaking in around her feet. "Ryan!" she cried. "Ryan, I'm stuck. Please help me. Please!" Chloe was already sobbing. "Ryan, get me out! Get me out! Please!" Ryan twisted around, his face pale and frantic. Rain blew in through the shattered windshield. The car groaned, dipping further forward. Emma reached toward him. "Please! Please, the baby! Help me!" For one suspended second, Ryan froze. Then he made his choice. He grabbed Chloe first. He unbuckled her belt and pulled her toward the broken windshield. She clung to him, trembling uncontrollably. The car shifted again. Metal strained. Water surged in faster around Emma's legs. "I will come back!" Ryan shouted over the storm. "I will come back for you! Hold on!" But his eyes did not meet hers. He did not look back. He climbed out onto the railing with Chloe, pulling her to safety as the Mercedes tilted nose first toward the water. Emma felt her body slide downward. She clawed at the seat. Her fingers slipped. "No," she cried. "Ryan, please. Please do not leave me." The car dropped. The river swallowed her in a violent rush of cold. Darkness closed over her head. She heard nothing except the roar of water and the echo of her own voice fading. On the bridge, Ryan stumbled away from the railing with Chloe clinging to his arm. Rain poured over both of them. A police cruiser arrived, lights flashing wildly across the broken guardrail. The officer shouted, "Sir, was anyone else in that vehicle?" Ryan hesitated. A long, devastating second passed. Chloe stared at him. Ryan looked the officer straight in the eyes. "No, just us." The wind howled across the bridge as if protesting the lie. The storm raged on, refusing to let the truth rest beneath the river. And Emma was gone beneath the dark water, unseen, unheard, and abandoned. The river was colder than any nightmare Emma had ever imagined. It swallowed her whole, dragged her down, spun her like a rag through the current. Her lungs burned, her vision flickered. She reached out into the dark water, but her fingers caught nothing. The sound of the storm faded until it felt like she was sinking inside a silent void. Somewhere far away, she thought she heard her own heartbeat. Then there was nothing. Hours later, miles downriver, the water carried her broken body to a place she did not recognize. A collapsed beam from an old dock slowed the current just enough for a search team to spot something tangled beneath it. A diver signaled to the surface. A second diver reached down and grabbed fabric. A pale arm surfaced. A slow, almost non-existent pulse flickered beneath the skin. A woman, pregnant, barely alive. They pulled her out of the water with urgency sharpened by shock. Her face was blue, her lips were cold, her breath came in thin, rattling gasps. She did not respond when they spoke to her. Her hair clung to her cheeks like strands of seaweed. One diver pressed on her sternum and felt only silence at first. Then, faintly, a flutter. Not strong, but present. They loaded her into an ambulance and sped toward the nearest coastal hospital, 130 miles outside Manhattan. Rain hammered the roof. Sirens cut through the night. Paramedics worked in the narrow space, shouting numbers, adjusting oxygen, checking her abdomen for signs of fetal distress. The monitor beeped in an erratic rhythm. No one knew who she was. No one had found a bag, a phone, or any form of identification. They wrote her in as Jane Doe. Inside the emergency room, Dr. Lucas Hayes rushed forward the moment he heard the words pregnant and hypothermia in the same sentence. He had treated drowning victims before, but none who looked quite this fragile. Her skin was ice cold. Her breathing was a struggle. Her eyelids did not even twitch when he spoke near her ear. He called for warm IV fluids and oxygen. He checked her oxygen saturation. He pressed his fingers against the artery in her neck. The pulse was unstable. He ordered the nurses to begin a rewarming protocol. When he placed the ultrasound probe on her abdomen, the room became painfully silent. A heartbeat surfaced on the screen. Sluggish, weak, but steady. Lucas let out a breath he had been holding. Someone whispered, "Thank God." For a long time, no one spoke. The room smelled of river water and antiseptic. Machines hummed. Nurses moved around her with careful hands. Her hair was gently pushed away from her face. A blanket was draped across her torso. The sharp edges of death began to dull, replaced by the thin, fragile possibility of survival. Hours passed before Emma stirred. Her eyelashes fluttered. Her fingers twitched. A small sound escaped her throat, a sound full of confusion and pain. She tried to lift her hand, but could not. She tried to breathe deeply, but her ribs screamed. Panic rose before consciousness did. Her eyes opened. Bright lights blurred the ceiling. The smell of saline and metal filled her nose. A low beeping echoed in time with her own heartbeat. She blinked again, trying to piece together where she was. Her hand flew to her stomach. She gasped. Lucas stepped forward quickly. "You are safe," he said softly. "You are in a hospital. You were pulled from a submerged vehicle." Emma stared at him. Her voice cracked like dry leaves. "The baby." Lucas checked the monitor again. "There is a heartbeat," he said. "A little slow from the trauma, but stable." Emma closed her eyes. For a moment, the relief hurt more than the pain. She whispered something that sounded like "thank you." Lucas nodded, his expression steady and kind, but also sharpened by concern. "Do you remember anything?" he asked gently. "Anyone who was with you?" Her breath caught in her throat. Images slammed through her mind. The storm, the car tilting forward, Ryan's face twisting in fear, his hands pulling Chloe out, her own voice screaming beneath the water, her fingers reaching for someone who never reached back. "My husband," she whispered. "He left me." Lucas saw the terror in her eyes. He did not question it. He did not suggest she was confused. He simply nodded, wrote a note in her chart, and said quietly, "You will not have to see him here. You are safe from whoever hurt you." The words made her chest ache. Safety felt foreign, almost impossible. A nurse came in with fresh blankets. "We will need your emergency contact," she said kindly. "Anyone we can call?" Emma opened her mouth, but no name came out. Her parents were gone. Her brother lived far away and had not heard from her in months. And Ryan, she could not even think his name without feeling her stomach twist. Finally she whispered, "No contact." The nurse hesitated but did not press. She wrote it down and stepped out of the room. Lucas stayed. He watched Emma with the quiet focus of someone who had seen too many bodies pulled from the edge. "If someone did this to you," he said gently, "you do not have to protect them. Not here." Emma swallowed. Her throat burned. She wanted to speak, but the words tangled. She looked at him, this stranger who had saved her life without knowing anything about her, and found herself unable to tell him the truth. Not yet. Not when everything still tasted like river, water, and betrayal. Outside the hospital, the storm softened into a tired drizzle. Inside a different hospital in Manhattan, Ryan Bennett played the role of the grieving husband. He kept his voice low. He kept his face pale. He told detectives that his wife had exited the vehicle before the crash. He repeated the lie until he almost believed it. Chloe sat beside him, shaking, but her silence revealed more than she intended. Detectives asked questions. They played a traffic cam snippet showing the car sliding. They mentioned hearing a woman scream. They said divers were searching but had little hope. Ryan nodded at the right times. He widened his eyes at the right moments. When they finally said the words "likely deceased," he let out a sound between a gasp and a sob. But it was not grief. It was something colder, something guilty, something relieved. Back in the coastal hospital, Emma stared at the ceiling. The fetal monitor beeped softly beside her. The blanket warmed her body as she fought to stay awake. The truth pressed against her chest, sharp and merciless. Someone had chosen to save her. Someone else had chosen to leave her. She closed her eyes, laying her hand across her stomach. The baby kicked, a small reminder that life still existed inside her. She was alive. The child was alive. And the world believed she was dead. Morning arrived in Manhattan with a gray heaviness that matched the mood inside the hospital where Ryan Bennett Saturday. The storm that had swallowed the night before still lingered in streaks of fog that clung to the windows. Reporters swarmed outside the lobby doors. Cameras flashed. Microphones pointed toward every person who entered, as if tragedy had become a public performance. Inside, Ryan played the role with practiced ease. His shoulders sagged. His eyes looked red. His voice shook at the right moments. He kept repeating the same story to every official and every colleague who stopped by. Emma must have exited the car before the crash. She must have stepped out when he turned to adjust the windshield. She must have walked away in the rain. Every version twisted slightly, shaped to fit the question being asked. No one pressed too hard. No one imagined a respected attorney would lie about losing his pregnant wife. Chloe sat near him, wrapped in a hospital blanket. Her makeup had smeared into soft shadows. She coughed occasionally, more dramatic than necessary. When people asked if she was all right, she nodded and wiped at invisible tears. Her silence supported Ryan's narrative better than words. Medical staff came and went. Detectives returned for follow-up questions. A partner from Ryan's firm arrived with a polished sympathy look and a prepared statement for the press. They wanted to manage the narrative. They wanted to control public perception. A tragedy involving a lawyer from a major firm required delicate handling. Ryan repeated the lie again. There was no one else in the car. He said it with his eyes down, as if the weight of grief strained his neck. He said it softly, so people had to lean in to hear him. He said it slowly, so it sounded like remembering hurt him. The detectives did not argue, but their faces shifted. Something about his story tugged at the truth like a loose thread. Late that afternoon, they approached him again. This time, they carried a printed report from the dive team. "We found the vehicle," one detective said. "The rear of the car was crushed, and part of the back seat has blood and a shredded strip of fabric." Ryan's throat tightened. "Probably from the crashed debris," he murmured. "There is more," the detective added. "A witness driving behind you said she heard a woman scream that she was pregnant." Chloe stiffened. Ryan swallowed. "The witness must have heard the wrong thing. The storm was loud." Another detective flipped open a tablet. A traffic camera captured the moment before the car hit the railing. "We can see 3 shapes inside. Faint, but visible." Ryan said nothing. His eyes darted to Chloe. She stared down at her hands, fingers clenched. "Mr. Bennett," the detective continued, "are you absolutely sure your wife was not in the vehicle? We need to confirm every detail." Ryan forced a nod. "She was not in the car." The lie grew heavier inside the room, thick enough to choke on, but no one challenged him. Not yet. Across the city, the media turned his story into a headline. Young Manhattan attorney devastated after storm tragedy. Pregnant wife, missing after vehicle, plunges from bridge. Search continues as husband cooperates with police. Articles praised his strength. Photos showed him gripping the railing of the bridge as if clinging to memory. Some news stations replayed a dramatized visualization of the crash. People commented online that grief looked etched into his face. The world believed him. But miles away, in a quiet hospital room lit by sterile lights, the real tragedy was unfolding inside Emma. She lay still, the blanket pulled up to her ribs. Her hair was damp from a recent sponge bath. Her skin remained pale from the cold that had nearly taken her life. She stared at the ceiling without blinking, as if trying to keep the memories from crawling back inside her mind. Lucas checked her vitals, then stepped back, giving her space. He sensed she did not need conversation. She needed silence. But silence made the memories sharper. She remembered the perfume on Ryan's shirt, a sweet, expensive scent she did not own. She remembered the strange late nights, the sudden changes in his tone whenever she asked simple questions, the way he angled his phone away from her, the way Chloe lingered in conversations, the way Ryan had introduced her at company events with a rehearsed smile and a faintly distracted expression. She had tried to dismiss it. She had blamed herself. Stress from work, pregnancy hormones, lack of sleep. She had told herself that marriages had rough seasons, that Ryan was overwhelmed with his new position. She believed that if she stayed soft and understanding, everything would settle again. But the truth had been sitting beside him in the passenger seat the whole time. She remembered the gala photo, Ryan leaning close to whisper something into Chloe's ear, Chloe's hand resting on his arm, their smiles too synchronized, too intimate, too practiced. Emma had stared at the photo in the kitchen months ago, feeling her heart sink like a stone. When she confronted him gently, he had snapped, accused her of being insecure. He made her feel unreasonable for reacting to what any woman would have recognized. She remembered her birthday dinner, when Ryan had turned away from her mid-conversation to answer a phone call from an unknown number, leaving her alone at the table while her food went cold. Chloe walked in 10 minutes later, claiming she had been just passing by. Ryan had acted surprised, but Emma saw the glance between them, a glance filled with history. Now, lying in the bed with an IV in her arm and oxygen flowing softly against her nose, Emma saw everything clearly. All the red flags she had ignored, all the excuses she had accepted, all the moments she had given him the benefit of the doubt. She felt foolish, but more than that, she felt broken. The river had not killed her. The betrayal had. When she closed her eyes, she saw the interior of the Mercedes tilting toward the water. She saw Ryan's hand reaching for Chloe. She saw her own fingers slipping on wet leather as she begged. She heard the exact tone in his voice when he said he would come back. A tone without conviction. A tone without love. She understood now that he never intended to return. He chose the woman beside him. He chose comfort. He chose fear. He chose the life he wanted more than the life he had promised her. Lucas stepped quietly to the doorway, intending to leave her to rest, but paused when he saw the look on her face. Her eyes were open again, staring at nothing, filled with a stillness that frightened him. Not panic, not disorientation, recognition. Emma was finally understanding the full truth. He wanted to say something comforting, but she whispered first. "He left me," she said. Her voice was barely audible. He chose her. Lucas did not respond. Some truths did not need answers. Emma turned her head slightly toward the window. The sky outside was clearing, a thin line of pale blue peeking through the gray. She blinked once. Then she accepted something silently and completely. Ryan had not hesitated. He chose Chloe because he wanted her more. He chose Chloe because he loved her more. He chose Chloe because Emma, in that moment, was not the person he wanted to save. Emma closed her eyes again. Not in peace, not in resolution, in understanding. The days that followed moved slowly, like time itself was trying not to disturb the fragile woman lying in the hospital bed. Emma remained weak, her skin pale and cool, her breaths shallow, but the immediate danger had passed. The rewarming treatments worked. Her blood pressure steadied. The fetal monitor settled into a soft, continuous rhythm. Nurses whispered that it was a miracle. Doctors said they had never seen someone survive so long underwater. But survival did not feel like a blessing to her yet. It felt like waking up in a world where nothing familiar existed. Lucas continued checking on her more often than medical protocol required. He arrived first thing in the morning with a clipboard and a cup of warm water. He arrived at night to make sure her vitals did not dip. He spoke gently. He moved slowly. He treated her as if any sudden sound or careless word could reopen the wounds that were invisible but deep. Sometimes she looked at him without speaking, her eyes distant, as if she were afraid that opening her mouth might cause the memories to spill out like floodwater. On the third day, the chief nurse stopped him in the hallway. "There have been calls from Manhattan," she said. "Police are asking if we admitted any unidentified women during the storm." Lucas felt a tightening in his chest. "What did you tell them?" "Lo? That we had one Jane Doe," the nurse said. "But we could not release information without proper authorization. They will probably call back." He nodded, but his jaw clenched, his instincts sharpened. Something about the questions felt wrong. He returned to Emma's room. She was awake, staring at the wall. Her fingers twisted the corner of her blanket again and again, as if she were trying to keep her hands busy so her mind would not think. "Emma," he said softly, "do you remember giving the hospital permission to share your information with anyone in Manhattan?" She shook her head, a tiny movement. "Then you do not have to worry," he said. "No one will know you are here unless you want them to." Her throat tightened. "They are looking for me." He heard the fear beneath her whisper. Not the fear of being found as a missing person, the fear of being found by someone specific. He pulled a chair closer. "Tell me why that scares you." She hesitated. Her gaze drifted toward the window, where sunlight filtered through a thin curtain. It cast faint shadows on the floor that rippled slightly as the breeze brushed the fabric. She watched them for a long moment, as if gathering the courage to speak. When she finally did, her voice broke on the first word. "He left me." Lucas stayed still. He did not ask what she meant. He let her speak in her own time. "In the car," she said. "He left me to die. He took her out first. He pulled her out and promised he would come back, but he did not. He did not even look at me." Her face tightened with pain that had nothing to do with her physical injuries. She dug her nails into the blanket. I was screaming, and the car was going down, and he just took her. He chose her. He left me there." Lucas felt something cold settle in his stomach. Not shock, not doubt. A quiet, controlled anger on her behalf. He had suspected someone had harmed her. He had not imagined the cruelty with which it was done. He leaned forward slightly. "I believe you." The words froze her. She stared at him, confused. "You do?" "Yes," he said. "I believe you. I see the way you flinch when the lights dim. I hear how you struggle to breathe when someone walks too quickly past the door. I saw the bruises from the seatbelt, and the way you reached for your stomach the moment you woke up. Trauma leaves its own footprints. Yours are clear." Von. Her eyes filled with tears but did not spill over. She shook her head slowly. "No one ever believes me when I say something is wrong." "I do," he said quietly. "And I am not going anywhere." She closed her eyes for a moment as if letting those words sink into places inside her that had been abandoned. When she opened them again, the panic that had lived in her expression since the river had softened, just slightly. "Will he come here?" she asked. "Will he try to find me?" "Oh no." Lucas considered his answer carefully. "If he calls this hospital, we will not tell him anything. If police call again, we will say, 'You are not in a condition to speak. You are safe here. I will make sure of it.'" Her breathing steadied, though her fingers still gripped the blanket tightly. Later that afternoon, 2 detectives from Manhattan called again. They requested a list of unidentified female patients. Lucas intercepted the call and stated, firmly and professionally, that the patient's condition prevented any disclosures. The detectives insisted. He insisted harder. Eventually they hung up, unsatisfied. He went back to Emma's room. She looked up at him with a question in her eyes, but he answered before she could ask. "They will not get anything from us," he said. "I will protect your privacy." Emma rested her head back on the pillow. She exhaled in a shaky breath. "Thank you." "No." The gratitude sounded deeper than simple appreciation for medical care. It carried the weight of someone who had been abandoned and now, for the first time, was being protected. As evening came, the room turned quiet except for the steady rhythm of the fetal monitor. The sky outside darkened into shades of indigo. Nurses softened their voices. Footsteps in the hallway grew slower. The world seemed to settle into a gentle lull. Lucas checked her chart one more time. He adjusted her IV line with careful hands. Before leaving, he paused at the doorway. "You survived something terrible," he said, "but you are not alone in it. Not anymore." The door clicked shut. Emma stared at the ceiling long after he left. His words replayed in her mind. "Not alone." She turned her hand and placed it over her stomach. The baby moved faintly beneath her palm, a small reminder that life still existed. For the first time since she had been pulled from the river, she felt the smallest thread of certainty rising within her. Someone believed her. Someone stayed. She was not alone in the world anymore, and that realization, fragile and small, held her through the night. Noah Bennett arrived at the coastal hospital just after sunrise, still wearing the jacket he had thrown on in the middle of the night. His face was pale from the drive. His hands trembled as he pushed through the glass doors. He had not slept. He had barely breathed since Lucas called him with the impossible news. "Your sister is alive." The words had sounded unreal, almost cruel. For 2 days he had watched news reports saying Emma was missing and presumed dead. He had pictured his little sister sinking beneath the stormy water. He had imagined the baby gone. His heart had fractured into pieces he could not gather. Now he rushed past the nurses' station, barely hearing their directions. He opened the door to Emma's room and stood frozen in the doorway. She was alive. She lay propped against a pillow, weak and pale, but breathing. Her eyes lifted toward him. For a moment she looked unsure if he was real. Then her chin trembled. A soft sound escaped her. "Noah." He crossed the room in 3 long strides and wrapped his arms around her gently, afraid of hurting her but unable to let go. She pressed her forehead to his shoulder, her body shaking from the force of her sobs. He held her until her breathing steadied. When he finally pulled back, he brushed a strand of hair from her face. "I thought I lost you." Emma swallowed hard. "I thought I was gone too." Noah looked at her with a mix of relief and anger. "What happened?" "They said you were not in the car. They said you walked away." Emma closed her eyes, pain tightening her expression. He lied. Those 2 words carried the weight of the entire nightmare. Noah sat down beside her, jaw clenched. "Emma," he said quietly. "You cannot go back there." She nodded without hesitation. "I cannot." He took her hand, squeezing it gently. "Then we will make sure you do not. You will not be anywhere he can find you. You come." Lucas stepped into the room then, giving them privacy until now. He offered Noah a small nod, acknowledging the gravity of the moment. "She is stable enough to leave soon," Lucas said. "But she should not return to Manhattan. It is not safe emotionally or physically." Emma stared at her blanket. "I do not want him to know I survived." Lucas nodded. "Then he will not." They spent the rest of the afternoon planning. Noah called his contacts carefully, using excuses that revealed nothing. Lucas arranged for discharge papers under a temporary alias. The hospital staff, aware of the situation but not the details, cooperated without question. No one wanted to send a vulnerable woman back into the hands of someone who had abandoned her. That night, after the corridors quieted and visiting hours ended, Noah helped Emma into a loose sweater and a warm coat. She moved slowly, still sore, still weak, but determined. Lucas met them at the side exit. He handed Noah a folder containing follow-up medical instructions and prenatal care note. "She will need rest," Lucas said, "and she will need support." Noah nodded, his expression firm. "She has me." Lucas turned to Emma. His voice softened. "Take care of yourself. And if you ever need help, even months from now, call me." Emma looked at him, gratitude filling her eyes. "Thank you for saving us." He shook his head lightly. "You saved yourself. I just helped." "No." The wind outside was sharp when they stepped into the parking lot. The sky was still bruised from the storm, streaked with fading clouds. Noah buckled her carefully into the passenger seat of his car. She looked back once at the hospital, at the place where her life had been handed back to her, then closed her eyes. They drove for 2 hours along the coast. The ocean followed them on the left, sometimes calm, sometimes crashing against rocks. Emma watched the waves whenever she woke. The movement soothed her in ways she did not expect. It made her feel small and safe at the same time. By the time they reached the little seaside town, the sun was rising again. The streets were quiet. Old wooden shops lined the main road. A small cafe bookstore sat on the corner, its windows glowing warmly despite the early hour. The owner, an older woman with kind eyes, led them up a narrow staircase to the attic room she sometimes rented to seasonal workers. It was small but homey, a single bed, a tiny window overlooking the ocean, a wooden dresser that smelled faintly of salt, a lamp with a frayed shade. The kind of place no one would think to search. The kind of place where a broken heart could hide. Emma sat on the edge of the bed, breathing slowly. "It is perfect," she whispered. Noah exhaled in relief. "You can stay here as long as you need. I will cover the rent. I will come every weekend. You do not have to do anything except rest." "No." Emma lay back, one hand on her stomach. The baby kicked lightly beneath her palm. It felt like a quiet reminder that, despite everything, life continued. Days passed. Emma learned the rhythms of the little town. She spent mornings in the cafe downstairs, sipping tea while the owner baked fresh pastries. She watched locals stop in for coffee before work. She listened to their soft greetings, their gentle laughter, their simple stories. The world felt different here, slower, kinder, but the nights were harder. She had nightmares, not of the river, but of the car tilting forward, of Ryan pulling Chloe by the arm, of his eyes refusing to meet hers. She woke sweating. Sometimes she woke crying. She would sit by the attic window, hugging her knees, whispering to her unborn child that they were safe now. Lucas visited twice during the first week. He brought vitamins, prenatal supplements, and a soft reassurance she did not know how much she needed. When he checked her heartbeat and the baby's heartbeat, he never rushed. He never asked questions that would hurt. He simply gave her the calm she could not give herself yet. By the end of the month, Emma could walk through town without fear gripping her chest. She still kept her hood up. She still avoided long conversations, but she breathed easier. And sometimes, when she stood by the shore, the waves felt like they were washing away pieces of her pain. One morning, she stepped out of the cafe with a warm cup of tea. The breeze lifted her hair. Seagulls circled overhead. The town felt small and quiet and good. She placed a hand on her belly and took a slow breath. The past was still inside her, heavy and aching. But for the first time since the river, She felt the faint stir of something she had not felt in a long time. Hope, just enough to take one more step forward. Manhattan did not sleep easily after the storm. At first, the city accepted Ryan Bennett's story without hesitation. His colleagues offered condolences. His firm crafted a polished statement filled with phrases about tragedy and loss. News anchors described him as a devastated husband grappling with an unthinkable night. But lies have a way of bending under their own weight. 2 weeks after the accident, a small blog called City Night Watch posted an article that should have disappeared into internet noise. The blog usually reported on nightlife mishaps and unusual street events. But one of its writers, a college student with an old laptop and too much curiosity, had spent hours replaying the traffic footage of the Mercedes hitting the railing. When he brightened the footage and slowed it down, he noticed something that did not match the official narrative. There were 3 shapes inside the car, not 2. He published the images with the caption, "A third person in the Bennett crash. Who was she?" The post spread slowly, then quickly, then explosively. Larger outlets began asking questions. Some reporters demanded an updated police statement. Others speculated about an unidentified victim. Comment sections filled with arguments. The phrase, "third figure," appeared in headlines across multiple platforms. Ryan tried to ignore the noise, but every morning he woke to more messages, more calls, louder whispers. 3 days after the blog post, a woman came forward on a local news broadcast. She had been driving behind the Mercedes on the night of the storm. She said she heard a woman screaming through the rain, a woman crying out that she was pregnant. Ryan saw the interview from his office. His hands trembled so hard he spilled coffee on his desk. The panic he had been suppressing surged up in his chest and nearly choked him. At the firm, his co-workers began watching him differently. There was a new distance in their expressions, a hint of suspicion lurking behind polite smiles. One afternoon, the managing partner asked him to step into a private office. "We need to be clear on the facts," the partner said. "Detectives are still asking for details. The media keeps digging." "I told the truth," Ryan insisted. "She was not in the car. She left before the accident." But the certainty in his voice had thinned, the partner noticed. Behind the scenes, the firm's public relations director recommended that Ryan take time off. He refused. He needed to appear stable. He needed to appear normal. He needed everyone to stop asking questions. But the questions did not stop. They multiplied. Chloe tried to stay by his side at first, but the pressure mounted. Reporters discovered photos of them together at company events. Someone leaked messages between them that looked far too intimate for professional co-workers. Commenters online called her the shadow passenger and the woman he saved. One night, Chloe arrived at Ryan's apartment with swollen eyes and a trembling voice. "I cannot do this anymore," she said. "Everyone knows. My parents called me. My job is on the line. Your life is falling apart, and you are not the man I thought you were." Ryan grabbed her arm. "You cannot leave me!" She pulled away. "You left her. I saw your face that night. If you could abandon your own wife, what would you do to me?" She walked out, closing the door softly behind her. The soft click sounded louder to Ryan than any slam. The next morning, 2 detectives returned to question him again. Their tone was different now, sharper, less patient. They repeated questions he had already answered, but this time they asked them in new ways. They compared his statements to witness reports. They asked whether Emma had shown any signs of distress earlier that night. When they left, Ryan collapsed into a chair. Sweat formed across his forehead. He wiped it away with a shaking hand. He could feel everything slipping. A week later, he attended a legal networking event, hoping visibility would calm rumors. But instead of staying for the keynote speech, he stepped outside to breathe. The walls felt too tight. The voices felt too close. His heartbeat would not slow. Across the lobby, he noticed a familiar face. Lucas Hayes, the doctor who had treated Emma on a previous medical issue years ago. A man Ryan barely remembered but recognized enough to approach. Lucas did not see him at first. He was walking out of a conference room with a folder under his arm. He moved with calm confidence, the kind of quiet that unnerved Ryan instantly. Ryan quickened his steps. "Dr. Hayes." Lucas turned. His expression hardened slightly. "Ryan, it has been a while." "No." Ryan forced an uneasy smile. "I heard you were speaking at this event." Lucas nodded without committing to conversation. Ryan shifted his weight. His voice came out strained. "Do you know anything about the investigation?" Lucas studied him for a long moment. "Why would I?" he said. Ryan ran a hand over his face. "Because there is talk about a third person. They think she was in the car." Lucas remained silent. Ryan swallowed. The truth he had buried began scraping at the edges of his mind. "Do you think she could still be alive?" Lucas did not react immediately. He watched Ryan with steady eyes that made him feel as though he were being examined, weighed, and judged. "Why would that idea scare you?" Lucas asked finally. Ryan blinked rapidly. "What? You asked if she could still be alive?" Lucas repeated. "Most husbands who lose their wife cling to hope. They do not fear it." "No." The words carved through Ryan with surgical precision. He took a step back, his voice trembling. "If she is alive, everything changes." Lucas nodded. "Yes, it does." Ryan's breath hitched. His entire body went cold. He had imagined Emma dead beneath the water. He had imagined silence. But the idea that she might breathe somewhere, that she might have survived, that she might one day speak, terrified him more than any nightmare. His eyes darted around the lobby. Every shadow felt like a watcher. Every voice sounded like a threat. His carefully crafted lies no longer felt sturdy. They shook beneath him like the bridge on the night he let her go. He whispered something so faint, Lucas barely heard it. "She could ruin me." Lucas's expression darkened. "Or she could simply tell the truth." Ryan stumbled backward, unable to hold the doctor's gaze. His heart pounded with a fear he could no longer hide. He walked away as if fire chased him, and for the first time since the accident, he understood something he had tried to deny. The truth was not buried. It was alive somewhere, and it was coming. The storm arrived without warning. One moment the sky above the little seaside town was a calm shade of gray, and the next it turned thick and heavy, as if a wall of darkness had swept in from the open sea. Wind howled against the rooftops. Branches snapped in the alleys. Rain slammed the windows so hard the glass shivered in their frames. Emma stood at the attic window watching the clouds churn. The sound felt too familiar. It echoed the night she lost everything. Her fingers tightened around the curtain. Her breath trembled. She whispered to the baby inside her belly, trying to soothe both of them. "It is just a storm," she said softly. "We are safe." But her words barely left her lips before a sharp pain tore through her abdomen. It forced her forward, her hand gripping the edge of the window frame. She gasped. She felt the tightening again, stronger this time. Not the gentle pressure she had learned to expect. This was deep, urgent, and unmistakable. Her knees weakened. She pressed a hand to her stomach. "Not yet," she whispered. "Please, not yet." Another contraction hit, even harsher. She reached for her phone with trembling hands and called Noah. Her voice cracked when he answered. "I need you. I think it is happening." He was at the cafe door in minutes. Rain soaked him instantly as he climbed the stairs to her room. When he reached the top, he found her bent over the bed, breathing in short, desperate bursts. "No," he muttered. "Not in this weather." A roll of thunder shook the building. Emma flinched. She tried to straighten, but a third contraction forced her to her knees. Noah rushed to her side. He placed a steadying hand on her back. "We need to go now," he said. "Lucas is already at the hospital for night rounds. He can handle this." Emma tried to speak but could only nod. She clung to Noah as he guided her down the narrow staircase. Rain battered the windows. The cafe owner hurried toward them with towels and a worried expression. "Take my car," she insisted, pressing the keys into Noah's hand. "It has better traction." Noah thanked her and helped Emma into the back seat. She curled against the cushions, grabbing the headrest as another contraction ripped across her abdomen. The storm intensified. Sheets of water flew across the windshield, blurring the world outside into violent streaks. Noah drove with both hands tight on the wheel. The road glistened under the storm, every curve a threat. The wipers struggled to keep up. A flash of lightning illuminated the road ahead for only a second before darkness swallowed it again. Emma gasped and doubled over. "It hurts," she cried. "I know," Noah said. His voice was steady, but fear throbbed beneath it. "Just keep breathing. We are going to make it." The hospital lights finally appeared through the storm. Noah pulled into the emergency lane just as another blast of wind rocked the car. He jumped out, ran through the rain, and opened her door. Emma clung to him, nearly collapsing as she stepped onto the wet pavement. Thunder cracked overhead. A nurse rushed out with a wheelchair, shouting instructions over the roar of the storm. They wheeled Emma through the sliding doors, dripping water across the tiles. Lucas appeared at the end of the hallway the moment he heard the commotion. His sleeves were already rolled up. He moved toward Emma with purpose and concern. "How far apart are the contractions?" he asked Noah. "She barely has time to breathe between them." Lucas crouched beside Emma. She lifted her head, tears streaking her cheeks. "I am scared," she whispered. "I know," he said gently, "but you are not alone. I am right here. We are going to deliver your baby safely." "You is." They brought her into a delivery room where the storm's roar shook the walls. Nurses gathered equipment at lightning speed. The fetal monitor beeped rapidly as the baby's heartbeat struggled to stay steady. The force of each contraction made Emma clutch at the sheets, her face pale with pain. Lucas stood at her side. "Emma, you need to focus on your breathing. You can do this. Your baby is fighting with you." Her breaths came in ragged pulls. The storm outside intensified. Wind rattled the roof. The lights flickered once, then steadied. She gripped Noah's hand, her nails digging into his skin. "I cannot," she gasped. "I cannot do this." "Yes, you can," Noah said. His voice cracked but stayed firm. "You survived the river. You survived him. You survived everything. You can do this too." Another contraction tore through her. She screamed into the storm. The air in the room trembled with the sound. Lucas checked her dilation. "It is time," he said. "Emma, I need you to push. Now." Her body heaved forward with the effort. Pain radiated through her. Sweat and tears blurred her vision. She pushed again, and again, and again. Each push felt like the edge of breaking. The storm roared louder, as if the world outside was pushing with her or fighting against her. Then she heard it, a cry. A small, fragile, miraculous cry. She collapsed back against the pillows as the sound echoed through the room. Lucas lifted a tiny baby into the air. The nurses wrapped her quickly in a warm blanket. Her cries grew stronger, fierce, alive. Lucas carried the newborn to Emma. "She is here," he said softly. "Your daughter is here." Emma reached out with shaking hands. The moment she felt the warmth of her baby against her chest, something inside her broke open. Not a wound, not fear. A fierce, overwhelming love. The kind she had never known she was capable of. The storm outside continued to batter the windows, but it no longer felt like a threat. It felt like a backdrop to something extraordinary. A reminder that life could be born even in the harshest moments. A reminder that she had survived to meet her daughter. Noah wiped his eyes. "She is beautiful." Emma looked down at the tiny face resting against her skin. "Grace," she whispered. "Her name is Grace." The baby let out a soft whimper, then relaxed into her mother's heartbeat. Emma felt a calm settle over her. A calm she had not felt since long before the bridge. She stroked the tiny curls on Grace's head and realized her survival had never been an accident. She had lived for this moment, for this child, for this love. And as the storm raged outside, Emma held her daughter and understood something with absolute clarity. Grace was not only her baby, Grace was her second chance. 2 months passed after the stormy night that brought Grace into the world. In that time, the small seaside town wrapped itself around Emma like a quiet cocoon. The days were slow and gentle. The nights were still hard, but no longer unbearable. The scent of coffee from the cafe below drifted into her attic window each morning. Grace's soft breaths at night soothed the sharp edges of Emma's memories. She had survived the river. She had survived labor in a storm. She had survived abandonment. And now, she was ready to reclaim her life. Emma felt stronger with each passing week. Her body healed. Her mind settled. She could walk along the shore without flinching at sudden noises. She could hold Grace against her chest without fearing the past would find her. But beneath the calm, a quiet resolve grew like a flame. She was not hiding anymore. Noah visited almost every day. He brought groceries. He carried Grace around the room in slow circles until she fell asleep. And when Emma confessed one morning that she was ready to face what had been done to her, he did not hesitate. "Then we will face him," Noah said. and he will not be able to run from what he did. Lucas stopped by that same afternoon, as if he could sense the shift in the air. He examined Grace, checked Emma's blood pressure, and listened while Emma told him she was ready. He nodded once. Then it is time to bring in someone who can help us speak the truth in a way the law cannot ignore. On. Stephanie Cho arrived 3 days later. She was sharp, direct, and confident. A woman known for dismantling lies with surgical precision. She shook Emma's hand gently, then sat down at the small kitchen table upstairs, spreading out her notebook and a stack of legal pads. "First," Stephanie said, "I want you to know that what happened to you is not something the court will take lightly. This is not just abandonment. It is endangerment, deception, and a pattern of behavior we can prove." The word prove hung in the room with comforting weight. Evidence. Facts. Truth. Stephanie opened a folder. "Let us start with what we have." Noah placed documents on the table. A timeline based on Emma's memory, the weather report, GPS data from his car during the storm, and statements from the coastal hospital confirming Emma had been admitted as an unidentified drowning victim. Lucas added medical records. They showed hypothermia, trauma, and fetal distress. They documented her injuries and her recovery. He had included his own medical notes from the night she arrived. Finally, Stephanie held up her most powerful tool, a small audio file that Noah had helped recover from an old message Chloe had once forwarded. Ryan's voice was clear. "If she is alive, everything changes." Emma inhaled sharply. She remembered that voice. She remembered the coldness in it. Hearing it now made the air in the room feel thinner. "This," Stephanie said, tapping the file, "is intent. It will be hard for him to lie after this." Emma sat quietly, her hand resting on Grace's tiny socked foot. "I do not want revenge," she said softly. "I want the truth spoken. Even if he never apologizes, I want to stand in front of him without fear." Stephanie nodded. "Then we will give you that moment." They planned everything over the next week. Transportation, documents, backup copies of every file, 2 sealed envelopes that only Emma would open at the right time. Stephanie insisted that Emma stay calm and focused during the confrontation. She said their strength would come from clarity, not anger. The morning they left for Manhattan, the air tasted like sea salt and early sunlight. Emma strapped Grace into a small carrier and kissed her forehead. Noah carried the bags to the car. Lucas promised that once they returned, he would check on both mother and baby again. Emma took one last look at the town that had sheltered her. Then she got into the car. The drive to Manhattan felt long, but Emma did not tremble the way she once had. Instead, she stared out the window, watching the city skyline rise in the distance, sharper and colder than she remembered. Grace slept against her chest with gentle breaths. Emma placed a hand over her small back. "I survived for you," she thought. "I can face anything now." When they reached the law firm where Ryan worked, Stephanie walked ahead with confident strides. She led them into the elevator, up 20 flights, and into a glass conference room that overlooked the city. The room was bright and clinical, the kind of place where decisions were made with cold logic. Emma sat at one end of the table. Noah stood behind her. Stephanie arranged documents neatly in front of them. Outside the glass walls, people crossed hallways unaware that history was about to change inside this room. The door opened. Ryan stepped in. His footsteps slowed the moment he looked up and saw her. His breath caught in his throat. His face drained of color. His hand fell limp against his side. For a moment he did not move. He simply stared as if the world had split open beneath him. Emma sat still. Grace shifted softly against her. Emma placed a protective hand over the baby. Ryan stumbled forward. "Emma, how are you here?" She met his gaze, calm and steady. "I survived." The words cracked something in him. His knees almost buckled. He looked at Grace next. His voice broke. "The baby, I thought. They said, you were gone." Emma inhaled slowly. Her voice did not shake. "I am not Mrs. Bennett anymore." The sentence landed like a strike. Ryan recoiled, his expression twisted with disbelief and fear. Stephanie spoke next. "We are here for clarity. Nothing more, nothing less." Ryan blinked rapidly. "This is not possible. I told the police. I told everyone. I thought she left the car." Emma's voice remained quiet. "You left me in that car. You saved her. You walked away." Ryan's eyes filled with panic. I did not mean. I was scared. I thought the car would fall. I thought I could go back. You never looked back, Emma said. Silence swallowed the room. Stephanie slid the audio file across the table. And you said this. Oh. Ryan listened, his face twisted with horror. I did not know anyone heard that. I was upset. You were preparing for the possibility that she survived, Stephanie said, because you knew what that meant. Ryan's breathing became shallow. The walls of the glass room felt tighter and tighter. Sweat formed across his forehead. His hands shook. Emma watched him without hatred, without rage, only truth. You made your choice, she said. Now I am making mine. Ryan's voice cracked. Emma, please, I did not want this. I never wanted any of this. But the performance he relied on for months no longer worked. The mask was gone. The room saw him clearly. He trembled. He swallowed hard. And for the first time since the night of the storm, Ryan realized something he could not outrun. His lies had a heartbeat. His choices had survived. And the truth he abandoned on the bridge had come back, alive and undeniable. The federal courthouse in Manhattan filled long before the morning sun reached the glass facade. Reporters crowded the steps with cameras raised high. Microphones pointed toward the doorway like a forest of metal stems waiting for the first sign of movement. Curious citizens lined the sidewalks, whispering to one another as they clutched coffee cups and craned their necks to see. The case had already captured the city. A husband, a missing pregnant wife, a river rescue no one knew about, a third figure in a car. Rumors had mixed with facts until the entire story felt like something pulled from a crime documentary. Everyone wanted to know the truth. Inside, the courtroom hummed with tension. Wooden benches filled with journalists, legal observers, and everyday New Yorkers who had followed each development. Even the security officers moved with heightened alertness, sensing the weight of the day. The doors opened softly. Emma entered. She walked slowly, carrying Grace in a soft knit blanket against her chest. Noah walked beside her with protective confidence. Lucas followed behind them with calm focus, and Stephanie Cho led the small group with measured steps. Conversations stopped. Heads turned. The sight of Emma, alive and steady, froze the entire room. Whispers spread like a wave. She survived. That is her. And the baby lived. What did the husband do? Emma did not look at the crowd. She focused on her breathing and the warmth of Grace sleeping against her. She felt the courtroom's weight settling around her, but she stayed upright. She had come here to speak the truth without fear. Then the opposite side of the courtroom doors opened. Ryan walked in. His suit was neatly pressed, but his face betrayed him. He looked pale, physically smaller, as if the lies had eaten pieces of him from the inside. He scanned the room nervously. When his eyes met Emma's, he froze. Shock washed over his features. His knees faltered. He gripped the table for balance. It was as if seeing her alive inside a courtroom, rather than haunting the corners of his imagination, shattered whatever internal structure he had left. Grace stirred lightly. Emma lifted a hand to steady her. The judge entered. Everyone rose. Once seated again, the proceedings began. Stephanie stood with confidence. Your Honor, today we present the full truth of what happened on the night of the storm. We present evidence of abandonment, intentional deception, and misconduct that put the life of a pregnant woman and her unborn child at risk. Ryan flinched at every word. The first piece of evidence shown was the timeline. Cell tower records, weather reports, GPS pings from Noah's phone that proved Emma could not have wandered away from the accident scene. The courtroom examined the photos next. The blurry but undeniable shapes inside the Mercedes. 3 figures, not 2. A detective testified that the witness report of a woman screaming she was pregnant had been dismissed early because Ryan insisted there were only 2 passengers. A nurse from the coastal hospital explained how Emma had arrived with signs of near drowning and physical trauma consistent with being trapped inside a sinking vehicle. Then Lucas testified. He described her injuries, the initial pulse, the hypothermia, the fetal distress. He explained how she woke in panic and whispered that her husband had left her. The courtroom leaned forward at every word he said. Ryan tried to object, but the judge stopped him. You will have your turn. When it came, his turn was brief and faltering. I did not know she was in the car, Ryan insisted. The storm was loud. I thought she got out before the impact. I panicked. Anyone would have, but the audio recording came next. If she is alive, everything changes. His voice filled the courtroom, cold, afraid, calculating. Ryan pressed his hands against his face. That was taken out of context, he muttered, but the damage was done. The room reacted with shock and disgust. Even reporters lowered their cameras for a moment, as if the truth required silence to settle. Stephanie stepped forward again. Your Honor, this was not fear of loss. This was fear of exposure. Emma sat still through all of it, her expression calm, steady. She touched Grace's back gently as her daughter slept. That small movement seemed to anchor her in the moment. When the judge finally spoke, the room went silent enough to hear the hum of the ceiling lights. Mr. Bennett, the judge said, this court finds that your behavior on the night of the accident and your conduct in the weeks and months following demonstrate a severe failure of responsibility and truthfulness. Ryan stared ahead with empty eyes. You abandoned your wife during a life-threatening emergency and then misled law enforcement. You denied witnessing her struggle. You knowingly withheld information that could have led to her rescue. Ryan's breath stuttered. His fingers dug into the wooden table. Therefore, the judge continued, I award Emma Bennett sole legal and physical custody of the child, Grace Bennett. A soft cry of relief escaped someone in the back row. Emma closed her eyes briefly, overwhelmed by the weight of the decision. The judge continued, Mr. Bennett will have no visitation rights until he completes a full psychological evaluation and demonstrates improvement in impulse control and emotional stability. Ryan's shoulders collapsed inward. Additionally, this court orders an independent investigation into your statements to law enforcement and your actions during the accident. Any findings of negligence or intentional deception will be considered for further prosecution. Ryan opened his mouth as if to speak, but no sound came out. His hand trembled violently on the table. A journalist in the audience whispered, His career is over. Another murmured, He did this to himself. The judge concluded, This court stands for truth, and today the truth has been spoken. The gavel struck once. Sharp. Final. Emma hugged Grace closer. Noah placed a steady hand on her shoulder. Lucas exhaled quietly, relief softening his posture. Stephanie closed her folder with a small nod of satisfaction. Across the room, Ryan sank into his chair. His face crumpled. His body shook. His breath came in broken gasps, not because his lies were uncovered, but because the consequences were no longer avoidable. He had feared Emma's survival. Now he finally understood why. She had not come back for revenge. She had come back for the truth, and the truth had destroyed him. When Emma stepped out of the courthouse and felt the cold Manhattan air touch her cheeks, she did not feel victorious. She did not feel triumphant or powerful. She felt steady, like someone who had walked to the darkest place imaginable and had finally stepped into a softer light. Noah opened the back door of the car for her. She placed Grace gently into the seat, adjusting the blanket around her tiny hands. The city noise faded the moment the door closed. She sat beside her daughter during the long drive back to the seaside town. The skyline disappeared behind them, swallowed by distance and memory. Emma watched it go without sadness. Manhattan had taken everything from her. It had also given her the chance to reclaim herself. When they arrived at the town, the sky was painted in soft shades of lavender. The ocean breathed calmly. The wind carried the scent of salt and pine. Emma stepped out of the car and inhaled the familiar air that had saved her. Noah carried her bags upstairs while she settled Grace into her bassinet. The attic room felt warmer than she remembered. The afternoon sun poured through the window, catching the soft strands of Grace's hair. Emma leaned over the small crib and stroked the baby's cheek. Grace opened her eyes slowly, blinking up at the light. "You are safe," Emma whispered. "We both are." In the days that followed, life settled into a gentle rhythm. Each morning, Emma walked down the narrow stairs to the cafe, holding Grace against her chest. The owner brewed her a cup of warm tea before she even asked. Locals waved from their tables or smiled when they saw the baby. The sounds of clinking mugs and soft laughter filled the space with a kind of peace Emma had never known in Manhattan. Grace grew stronger. Her small hands curled around Emma's fingers with surprising determination. Her eyes followed the flicker of sunlight on the wall. Sometimes she smiled in her sleep, a tiny upward curve that made Emma's heart ache with something tender and new. In the evenings, Emma walked along the shore. She would stand where the tide reached up to touch her shoes. She watched the horizon stretch out in front of her, endless and calm. The waves no longer reminded her of the river. They reminded her of survival, of breath, of beginning again. Lucas visited often. Sometimes he arrived with medical supplies, sometimes with groceries, sometimes with nothing but his steady presence. He checked Grace's heartbeat, noted her progress, and made sure Emma was regaining her strength. But he never pushed. He never asked for more than she could give. He treated her future with the same care he had shown when he saved her life. One evening, after checking Grace's lungs and listening to her soft breaths, he stood by the window with Emma. The sky outside was deep blue. A thin silver moon hung over the water. "You look different," Lucas said gently, "more at peace." Emma wrapped her arms loosely around herself. "I think I am finally letting go." Lucas glanced at her. "You earned that," she smiled faintly. "Peace used to feel like something other people had, something impossible for me." "Not anymore," he said. She did not reply right away. She watched the moonlight ripple on the waves before speaking again. "I survived because someone chose to stay. I will not forget that." Lucas's eyes softened, but he did not speak. He did not need to. A few days later, a letter arrived in the mailbox downstairs. The handwriting was familiar in a way that made Emma's stomach tighten. She carried it upstairs slowly, sat on the edge of her bed, and stared at the envelope without opening it. She did not need to. Inside would be apologies written out of fear, guilt, or loneliness. Words he never had the courage to say when she begged for help inside that sinking car. Promises he would not have kept. Regrets spoken too late to matter. Emma placed the envelope in a drawer and closed it gently. She did not hate Ryan. Hatred would have tied her to him forever. What she felt now was something quieter, something final. The kind of closure that came not from punishment, but from understanding she no longer owed him a single piece of her heart. Noah visited that afternoon. He found her standing by the window, Grace sleeping in her arms. He kissed her forehead and looked at his niece with pride. "She is getting stronger," he said. "So am I," Emma replied. He smiled. "You deserve this life." Emma gazed down at Grace, feeling the warmth of her daughter's tiny body. "I think this is the life I was meant to find, not the one I lost." That night, after Noah left, Emma wrapped Grace in a soft blanket and carried her to the shore. The waves glowed faintly under the moonlight. The wind whispered through her hair. She stood there a long time, her feet sinking gently into the cool sand. Grace stirred and let out a small sigh. Emma lifted her slightly and kissed the top of her head. "I am not afraid anymore," she whispered. "Not of the past, not of him, not of anything." A calm pressed into her chest. Not the quiet forced by fear, but the stillness shaped by healing. The storm that once defined her story had been replaced by the sound of waves brushing the shore. She walked back toward the cafe, the soft glow of its lights guiding her like a lighthouse. Each step felt steady. Each breath felt whole. When she reached her attic room and placed Grace in her crib, she paused for a moment, letting the peace settle deep inside her. She touched the baby's cheek again, feeling the soft pulse of life beneath her fingertips. Everything she had endured, everything she had survived, led her here, not to revenge, not to anger, but to a life rebuilt from truth, strength, and love. Emma turned off the lamp, the room dim except for the moonlight spilling through the window. She lay beside her daughter and closed her eyes. For the first time in a long time, sleep came easily, and with it came the quiet after the storm.